Well, hello from the bayou. I am Sojourn Gray, and I am doing my very first YouTube video ever. So, let me tell you about myself, about what I kind of hope to make this channel about. So, I am a mystery age female who is incredibly interested in psychology and beauty and creativity and how that affects people psychologically and how to create beauty in our lives and feel comfortable with ourselves and how to address some of the mental health issues that are not at all being addressed. So I have struggles with depression and anxiety and CPTSD my whole life, as well as insomnia and reactive attachment disorder, which is an adopted disorder. Let me clarify, an adopted disorder in that you develop reactive attachment disorder generally when you're adopted. So you either, in the first 5 years, have a bond disrupted, and then you have either an over-attachment to everyone you meet, which is, hi, me, or you have an inability to form bonds in healthy relationships. And when I was born, because psychology is a relatively young art, it's only about 100 years old, I was adopted after 2 weeks, and I was breastfed for those 2 weeks. So I did bond with my mother, and it's a fascinating story. My whole life's a fascinating story, really. So I'm going to just tell you some of my fascinating stories and occasionally post vlogs on makeup and art, and all the time telling my stories and my ideas and my thoughts on things, because I keep getting told that I should write a book, and I'm not sure where to start, so I guess this is where I'm starting. So today I'm going to do my makeup, which is why you don't see me with makeup on. I think that it will help me to be less nervous when talking to you guys. I get a lot of compliments on my makeup. I love doing makeup. It's not about other people. It's the performer in me, and it makes me feel like I'm playing dress up. It feeds my inner child. So, today, I don't even know what we're going to do. I'm opening my drawer of makeup. But I'll start with a primer. You should always start with a primer. I usually start by spraying my face with a setting spray because it gives the primer something to stick to. So let's do La Base Pro, which is from Lancome, and it's a glycerin silicone-based primer, which means that it's super hard to fuck it up. Like, it really is. You really just can't go wrong with this primer. The only way that you go wrong with it is if you use something that isn't formulated to work well with glycerin, like water-based something, or... Oh, because like my squirter's not working, so I'm just rubbing it all over my face. So, after I was adopted, there are a lot of things that I went through that as I've grown up and I've started to profoundly study psychology, I realize how and why these things have happened to me, and it's been very difficult, I think, to come to terms with some of that stuff. So now I'm going to use some No, I'm gonna use some color stuff. Y'all forgive me, it's my first video, like I said, ever. But we're gonna use Naked Skin by Urban Decay in the green, which you can see I use a lot, and the yellow, which you can see I also use a lot, to do the under eye circles and the redness. So let's talk. I'm gonna do this. I'm also gonna go into the foundation after that. So I'm gonna give you a couple of my steps ahead of time so that we can actually have a conversation here. Woo! I'm just gonna scribble on my face with this. After I do this, I'll be doing Tint Idol in Buff 210, which is Lancome again, it's foundation, and mixing it with the Japanesque primer to give me a glow, a dewy look. And I'll be applying that in a manner that fills up my scars and covers my scars very well. And from there, I'll be putting a powder on a wet sponge and tapping it into my face to give it a set and again to cover up any scars or imperfections. All right, so let's see. What can I tell you about mental health that might be insightful or valuable? You know, it's really hard to be somebody who is semi-grown, and I say semi because with my disabilities, I'm behind my peers. I'm not as professional. I'm not as aware. I highly suspect that I have high-functioning Asperger's. And I say this because I have 2 children that have Asperger's, and they're diagnosed. I never was. It wasn't a common diagnosis when I was a kid. Woo. And my husband has Asperger's. And the more I endeavor to understand his disorder, the more it's made me realize that is probably what is going on. And if I have autism, I would be high functioning, which is an unfair term, because when you are called high functioning, then people expect you to function at a higher level. And it's not always rational to expect someone who has the social capacity and the emotional capacity of a much younger person to be able to navigate things with skills that they just don't possess. Like, whoever came up with the whole application process for disability, I understand people misuse it. I get that. But the reality is, if you have a mental health disorder, that kind of paperwork and process that you would have to go through just to get on a wait list and be rejected, which is a huge thing for people with mental health issues. Rejection is like the scariest thing in the world to us, and we've gone our whole lives having it. We've gone our whole lives having a bunch of rejection. So this is kind of intense. Oh yeah, there we go. I think that the system that we currently have, it doesn't look out for the truly disabled. And people fall through the cracks. And then they're old enough that nothing can be done without them doing something about it, but they're not capable of doing something on their own because they're disabled, and it's this catch-22. And certainly if you know anything about the history of psychology, we used to just lock people up for having their periods and stuff. So like that, and you could be a husband and easily lock up your wife, and it wasn't hard to get somebody put in the sanatorium back in the day, and many people did it for corrupt reasons. But I feel like there's just got to be a better way. And the only way we're going to find that better way is by talking about it, talking to each other, talking to people who have disorders, asking what has worked, why it's worked, why the things that didn't work, reframing questions till we can understand them. Did y'all know there are 3 different ways of learning? There is visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. Kinesthetic is when you have to do to learn. So what happens when we put a kinesthetic learner in school that expects you to take notes by listening? They're going to fail. And they're going to think they're dumb, even if they're not. And they're going to have a much harder time in life. Did you know that there are different ways that we receive affection and love and perceive affection and love? So, like, there's a difference between perceiving and receiving, obviously. Like, if I don't have the perception that what you're doing is loving, even if you have that perception, I'm not going to receive it. So I believe and highly recommend, if you're having communication or relationship issues, that you check out the 5 Languages of Love. 5 Languages of Love is a concept by a Christian author whose name I could not spout off to you at the of my fingers. But if you look at 5 Languages of Love, the author will be there. And they put out there that there are 5 main ways we receive love or perceive love. There's acts of service, gifts, that's 2, words of appreciation, physical affection, and time. Okay? So to give you an example, my hubby is a person who perceives love through gifts. And I perceive love through acts of service. If you clean the dishes for me, you love me. If you bring me food, you love me. If you take care of me when I'm sick, you love me. For him, if you think of him when you're out and about and you get him something that he likes, you love him. And just thinking about the damage this can do if you're not aware of that. So, because we tend to give love how we receive it. I mean, that makes sense, right? You like gifts, so you're going to get your girlfriend a gift. And when she's like, but you never do anything for me, you're going to be like, what are you talking about? I show you love all the time. So, I think that's an important concept that we need to explore. And I feel like there's all these different concepts out there that need to be put into a single package, like a comprehensive skill program or something. And then I think we would have a more concrete, useful way to help people. But who knows? I certainly don't have all the answers. Because if I did, I would be poor and living in the ghetto and unable to work because I have a broken ankle right now. And, you know, if we had all the answers, life would be easy, and it's not. What other concepts? Oh, I have my own personal concept. It's called, well, it's nothing fancy right now. Right now I'm just like introvert versus extrovert. And the reason that I think this is an important concept is because I have personally seen how my husband and I have different needs and interpretations of life based on introvertism and extrovertism. 3 guesses to who's the extrovert. That's right, it's me, guys. I am probably one of the more extreme extroverts you'll ever meet. I have a lot of trouble understanding the concept of needing alone time. For me, alone time is like when we're in the house and we're not interacting. Like right now, he's home and he's playing a game on his phone and I'm making this video, doing my makeup. I'm having alone time. This is alone time to me. For him, being in the same house or room with someone and doing something simultaneously, he's probably on the more extreme version of the introvert side, so it's interesting that we were attracted to each other. But he would say that we're spending time together right now. Let's ask him and see what he says. Hold on. Hey, Sky.
What?
Can you come here real quick and answer a question for my viewers?
What is?
Oh, boy.
Oh, God.
Oh, my.
Oh, no.
Oh, boy.
What are we getting into now?
Okay, this is Skywalker. This is my husband. Hi. So, Sky, I'm talking about different psychological important things while doing my makeup. I'm not really positive on the concept of my channel yet, just doing this for fun. So I was talking about introvertism versus extrovertism, and I was talking about how we perceive time alone. So right now, are we spending time together or are we spending time alone?
Alone. We're not in the same room.
Well, but would you say that because, are you saying that because of how I feel or because of how you feel?
It's an adaptation to you.
Okay, can you say that in the camera for me?
I just did.
I don't know if they can hear you. I'm not sure how well this picks up. Could you?
It should be fine.
You think so?
Yeah.
Are you being shy?
No.
Uh-huh. So my husband has, may I? Okay. So my husband has Asperger's. So that's another thing. If you have any kind of mental disorder or trauma, you're going to perceive things differently. For him, he requires really direct and explicit and bluntness. But he's also super sensitive, so I have to be very careful I don't hurt his feelings. So I have to think about what I'm saying and how that would be perceived by someone who receives gifts as affection and has autism, and I know the symptoms of that, and is an introvert extremely, and whose needs are very opposite to my own in certain ways. Lucky I love the man and he loves me, or we would not put up with this from anyone else. So I want to say that what he just said was, we're spending time alone. And I said, but are you saying that because, like, it's the right answer for me and you know it? And he said, no, I'm saying it because that's an adaptation to what you've told me. So previously, he would have said, we're spending time together. But because I have drilled it in his cute but thick skull, we're both pretty thick, so to be fair. He realizes that for me, this is not together time. And he's adapting to that, which is actually a big deal. It's taken we've been together over 3 years. So like for us to be at that point is a big deal. It's exciting. But seeing all these things, I guess I've got a conversation to have that I'm a little scared to have. So let me tell you what my next set of things is going to be. I used Covered FX in P20 to powder my face. I'm using Urban Decay Eyeshadow Potion in Eden, which is a matte eyeshadow potion thing to mattify my eyes and prime them. Then I will be using Huda Beauty baking powder and probably some other contouring tools. and then putting on some blush, and then doing my eyeshadow. So I'll show you the stuff as I put it on, but I'm going to keep talking. So, what I need to talk about. Like, the story's not complete if I don't tell the whole story, really. Like, you can't understand me or my motivations or all the things that have happened to me and what I've been through without understanding some key things about myself. So, my mom and I, we have a really rocky relationship. It's a lot better than it's ever been in our life, in my life, in her life. And I want to make something very clear. You know, I think part of why I've put off writing my book is because I know that the things that I have to say are going to hurt my mom. And I don't want to do that. I want to be really clear and say to you that my mom loves me. She did the best that she could. She was completely unprepared for a child with my disabilities. She had no one had any clue or advice or treatment that would help. It was hard. And dealing with somebody else who's a lot like me has really given me some insight into that. That being said, my mom's a very black and white person, and I was a watercolor palette of grays. And there were some things that happened that were traumatic and abusive. And I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm not ready. And even if I were right now, I'm not really certain that I'm willing to have this conversation with my mom yet. But that disabled me further because it made it to where I was operating from a point of PTSD, severe PTSD, and having meltdowns and not knowing why, and unable to understand why people always read something different into what I was saying than what I meant. And eventually I realized that was a frequent thing in my life. So it wasn't them, it had to be me. And eventually I was, well, the one thing my mom did right, and I did not appreciate at the time, but I appreciate it now, is she made sure that I had therapy from a very young age. So I grew up from the age of 3 in therapist's office, and they had a lot of money, and they made sure that I got a lot of help. And I to this day believe that if I had not grown up with those resources, that I would have a lot less insight, and I would be a lot less far along than I am. To the degree that I might not even be functional. So, part of it is a drive to make myself better, but definitely a part of it is all the therapeutic experience that I've had. And the fact that my mom was a teacher and my parents were always explaining things to me. So, like, I knew a lot about initially they thought I had bipolar, but I don't have manic episodes. I had, at the time, when I would get upset, things that I think looked a lot like manic episodes, but as an adult, I have 0 manic episodes, so kind of wish I did have manic episodes. I'd get more done. No, I don't wish that on anyone. I have a friend who's bipolar, or had a friend who was bipolar, and her bipolar ended our friendship, so it was more of a, I couldn't deal with that all the time, and she refused to let anyone take a front seat to her disorder. She was also narcissistic, so so that paved the way for me to not have a lot of confidence in myself, because there were some ugly things said and done to me out of frustration and anger. So she had every right. And I was appropriate. It wasn't my fault either. It's kind of one of those things. If you want to see this finished, look me up on Instagram, road by you score by you.